The crowd laughed when they sold her like livestock, but no one expected what she'd become. Lin May stood on that courthouse platform in 1885, hands tied, face burning with shame as men bid on her like property. A Chinese woman in Wyoming, worth less than a mule. They thought she was broken, disposable, weak. They were wrong. What happened next in those mountains would prove that survival isn't about where you're born. It's about what you're willing to become when the world leaves you for dead. Stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rope burns itched. Lin May had stopped trying to work her wrists free an hour ago. Maybe two. Time moved different when you were standing on a wooden platform in the middle of a town that wanted you gone, surrounded by faces that looked at you like you were something stuck to their boot. The sun beat down on Sweetwater's courthouse square, turning the air thick and mean. Dust kicked up every time someone shifted in the crowd, and there were a lot of people shifting, a lot of staring, a lot of whispering behind hands that didn't bother to hide the cruelty in their eyes. She kept her chin level. That was all she had left. "Gentlemen?" The auctioneer, some red-faced man whose name she didn't know and didn't care to learn, spread his arms wide like he was selling prime cattle. "We got ourselves a unique situation here today. Now, I know what you're thinking. Send her back where she came from," someone shouted. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Mean laughter, the kind that stuck to your skin. Lin May's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. Wouldn't give them that. The auctioneer chuckled, playing to his audience. "Well now, that'd be the simple solution, wouldn't it? But see, the railroad don't run on wishes, cost money to ship cargo, and this here cargo," he gestured at Lin May like she was a broken wagon wheel, "comes attached to a debt. Thomas Chen, God rest his foolish soul, racked up quite a bill before he went and died on us. Gambling debts, property debts. And since his associate here was living under his roof, well, that's not how debt works," a woman's voice cut through, sharp, educated. The auctioneer's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern for legal procedure, but Judge Morrison already ruled on this. The debt transfers. Now, any man willing to assume Mr. Chen's outstanding balance, which totals $47.30, can take possession of his remaining asset. Asset. Lin May felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear exactly. She'd burned through fear weeks ago when Thomas collapsed in the gambling hall and didn't get back up. When the landlord came knocking. When the sheriff showed up with papers she couldn't read and intentions she understood perfectly. No, this wasn't fear. This was something darker. Resignation, maybe. Or rage so deep it had nowhere left to go but inward. "Do I hear 4730? The auctioneer scanned the crowd. Silence. Someone coughed. A horse stamped. "Come now, gentlemen. She's small, I'll grant you, but she's got hands that work. Chinese are good for laundry. Everyone knows that. Could run a wash house, earn that money back in a year, maybe less." More silence. Lin May caught sight of a woman near the front, middle-aged, wearing a blue dress with lace collar, staring at her with something that might have been pity, might have been disgust. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. $40 even? The auctioneer's voice carried a note of desperation now. 35? A man in a bowler hat leaned over to his companion, voice carrying in the quiet. Why would anyone pay when they can just wait for her to starve? His friend snorted. Or freeze, winter's coming. The auctioneer heard it too. His face reddened. Now see here. $20. A new voice, young, nervous. Lin May's eyes found him. A kid, maybe 19, working up courage he didn't quite have. The auctioneer pounced. $20! We have 20. Do I hear 25? Boy, you don't want that trouble. An older man grabbed the kid's shoulder. Your mama would skin you alive. The kid's face flushed. He looked at Lin May, then away. I withdraw my bid. The auctioneer's shoulders sagged. $10? Anyone? She eats like a bird, probably costs nothing to feed. She eats it all? Someone called out. More laughter. Harder this time. Lin May felt her nails dig into her palms. The rope burn screamed, but the pain was good. Kept her present. Kept her from disappearing into the numbness that wanted to swallow her whole. This was it then. This was how her story ended. Not with dignity, not with choice, but with laughter and dust and the smell of horse shit baking in the Wyoming sun. Thomas had promised her things would be different here. Said America was where people reinvented themselves, where the past didn't matter as much as what you could build. He'd been kind, in his way. Took her in when her family's restaurant burned down in San Francisco, when she had nothing and nowhere. Didn't touch her, didn't demand anything except help with his books. He'd been terrible with numbers, good with cards, until he wasn't. And now he was dead. And she was this. $5, the auctioneer tried. Christ almighty, $5 for... Watch your language, Henry. A stern voice from someone Lin May couldn't see. Apologies, Mrs. Hartwell, but surely someone... Just let her go, a man said. Tired voice, reasonable. She'll move on or die. Either way, problem solved. Can't just let her go. There's a legal debt. Then arrest her, another voice suggested. Lock her up till she works it off. On what charge? Does it matter? The crowd was getting restless now. The spectacle had gone on too long without resolution. People wanted to get back to their lives, their ordinary problems, their ordinary hatreds. Lin May closed her eyes, just for a second, allowed herself that much. When she opened them, someone was walking through the crowd. Not walking, moving, deliberate, silent except for the crunch of boots on packed dirt. The crowd parted without being asked. People just stepped aside. Some looked uncomfortable, others looked almost afraid. The man, if you could call him that, was tall enough that Lin May had to tilt her head back to see his face when he reached the platform. Which wasn't much of a face at all. Beard covered most of it, thick and dark and tangled. What skin showed was weathered brown, carved with lines too deep for his age, whatever age that was. Hard to tell with mountain men. Could be 30, could be 50. But it was his eyes that made Lin May's breath catch. Dark, flat. The kind of eyes that had seen things and decided not to feel them anymore. A scar ran from his left temple down across his cheek, disappearing into his beard. His hands hung at his sides, relaxed but ready. He wore buckskin and canvas, patched and repatched, and carried the smell of pine smoke and distance. The auctioneer recovered first. Mr. North? Didn't expect to see you in town. The man, North, didn't respond, just looked at Lin May. She looked back. Held his gaze because what else was there to do? Die with your eyes down or die with your eyes up? She'd choose up. You here to bid? The auctioneer pressed. North's jaw worked. Finally, 47.30. His voice was gravel and rust, unused. The crowd went dead silent. The auctioneer blinked. Well now, 47.30 is the outstanding debt. Yes, sir, it is. Do I hear? No, you don't. North pulled a leather pouch from his coat, dropped it on the platform edge with a heavy clink. Count it. The auctioneer's hand shook slightly as he opened the pouch, started pulling out coins, gold eagles, silver dollars, counted twice. 47? 47.20? 47.30? He looked up, confused, relieved, worried. Well, Mr. North, Papers. Right. Yes. I'll just... The auctioneer fumbled with a stack of documents, scanning for the right one. Found it, held it out. North took it without looking at it, folded it once, tucked it in his coat. Then he reached up and grabbed the rope binding Lin May's wrists. She flinched, couldn't help it, but he wasn't rough, just efficient. Pulled a knife from his belt, a big ugly thing with a fixed blade, and cut through the rope in one motion. Her hands fell free. Blood rushed back into her fingers, sharp and painful. North didn't wait for her to recover, just turned and started walking. Lin May stood there, frozen, while the crowd murmured and shifted. Well, the auctioneer said weakly, that concludes our business here, I suppose. Caleb North? The woman from earlier, the one in the blue dress, pushed forward. Mr. North, I really must object to this entire proceeding. The legal basis is questionable at best. North stopped. Didn't turn around. You object, write a letter. I'm serious. This woman has rights. She want to stay. She can stay. Every eye turned to Lin May. She looked at the crowd, at the faces that had laughed, at the town that would let her freeze before it would give her work, at the woman in blue who meant well but whose pity wouldn't feed her or keep her warm. Then she looked at North's back. At the man who'd paid $47.30 for what? Her labor? Her silence? Her life? Didn't matter. She stepped off the platform and followed him. Behind her, the murmurs rose like a tide, but she didn't look back, kept her eyes on North's shoulders as he cut through the crowd, which parted for him the way water parted for a stone. He had a horse, a big roan gelding with patient eyes, tied outside the general store. No saddle, just a blanket and rope bridle. North swung up in one smooth motion, then extended his hand. Lin May took it. His grip was calloused, strong. He pulled her up behind him without effort. "Hold on," he said. She gripped his coat, and they rode. They didn't speak. The town fell away behind them. First the buildings, then the farms, then the fences. The land opened up, rolling and brown, with mountains rising in the distance like broken teeth. Lin May had never been on a horse before. The motion was strange, rolling, vaguely nauseating. She held tight to North's coat and tried not to think about what came next. Because what could come next? She'd traded one form of bondage for another. At least she knew what towns were. Mountains were something else entirely. The sun climbed, peaked, started its descent. Still they rode. Her legs cramped. Her back ached. Her throat dried to dust, but she didn't complain. Complaining required believing someone might care, and she'd lost that belief somewhere between the courthouse platform and here. When North finally stopped, it was near a creek, narrow but clear, running over smooth stones. He dismounted, then offered his hand again. Lin May slid down. Her legs nearly buckled, but she locked her knees and stayed upright. North led the horse to water, let it drink, pulled a canteen from somewhere and held it out to her. She took it, drank. The water was warm but clean. "Thank you," she said. Her voice came out rough. He nodded once, took the canteen back, drank himself. The silence stretched, not comfortable, not uncomfortable, just empty. Finally, North spoke. "You got a name?" "Lin May." He repeated it, pronunciation decent enough. "I'm Caleb." She nodded. "Trail's another 3 hours," he said. "You need rest, say so." "I'm fine." His eyes flicked to her, assessing. Then he turned back to the horse. "We'll see." They rode on as the sun painted the western sky red and gold. By the time they reached his place, if you could call it a place, full dark had fallen. No moon, just stars, more stars than Lin May had ever seen, scattered across the sky like spilled salt. She couldn't make out much of the cabin, just a darker shape against dark trees with a sliver of light showing through gaps in the shutters. North dismounted, helped her down, led the horse to a lean-to structure she could barely see. "Inside," he said, gesturing toward the cabin. Lin May walked to the door. It wasn't locked, wasn't even fully closed. She pushed it open. The interior was small. One room, maybe 12 feet by 12. A stone fireplace with embers glowing low. A table, one chair. A bedroll in the corner. Shelves with supplies, cans, jars, things she couldn't identify in the dim light. Everything neat, organized, sparse. This was where he lived. Alone, she realized, completely alone. North came in behind her carrying saddlebags, dropped them by the door, crossed to the fireplace and fed it kindling, blew on the embers until flames caught. Light filled the space, harsh, revealing. Lin May saw the scars on his hands, saw the way his left shoulder sat slightly lower than his right, saw the careful way he moved, like a man who'd learned to work through pain. He pulled a pot from the hook, filled it with water from a bucket, hung it over the fire, reached for a jar on the shelf, dried beans, added a handful to the pot. "Supper'll take a while," he said. She nodded. He looked at her properly then, really looked. Took in her torn dress, her too-thin frame, the rope burns on her wrists. "There's salve," he said, pointing to a shelf. "Clean cloth in that box, water in the bucket. Help yourself." Then he went back outside. Lin May stood alone in the cabin, listening to the fire crackle. Her hands shook. Just a little. Just enough to notice. She found the salve, some kind of grease that smelled like pine. The cloth. She washed her wrists carefully, wincing at the sting, then applied the salve, wrapped them loosely. The pot bubbled. She stirred it without being asked, adding water when it got too thick. North came back carrying firewood, stacked it neatly by the hearth, checked the pot, added salt from a tin. They ate in silence. The beans were plain but filling. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the food hit her stomach. When they finished, North took the bowls and cleaned them with sand and water, set them to dry. "Bedroll's yours," he said, nodding toward the corner. She looked at it, looked at him. "Where will you sleep?" "Got a spot." "There's only—" "I said I got a spot." Not harsh, just final. Lin May swallowed her questions, crossed to the bedroll. It smelled like smoke and leather and man sweat, but it was softer than the courthouse platform, softer than the ground. She lay down, still dressed, and pulled the blanket up. North added more wood to the fire. Then he settled against the wall opposite her, legs stretched out, arms crossed, hat pulled low over his eyes. Like he slept upright, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. "Thank you," Lin May said into the darkness. He didn't respond. Might have been asleep already. Might have just decided talking was done for the night. Either way, Lin May closed her eyes and let exhaustion take her. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of an axe biting wood. Gray light filtered through the shutters. Dawn, maybe. Or close enough. The fire was going strong. A pot of coffee sat at the edge of the coals, and there was jerky laid out on a tin plate. No sign of North. Lin May sat up, joints protesting. She'd slept hard, the kind of sleep where your body just shut down and refused negotiation. The axe sounds came from outside. Steady, rhythmic. She stood, smoothed her dress uselessly, and went to the door. The mountain morning hit her like a cold slap. Clear air, pine sharp, with mist hanging in the low places between trees. The cabin sat in a small clearing, surrounded by forest so thick it felt like a wall. Beyond the trees, higher peaks rose, still snow-capped despite the season. North was 20 feet away, splitting logs. He'd stripped down to his undershirt despite the cold, and sweat darkened the fabric between his shoulders. He worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Set the log, swing, split, repeat. The pile of split wood grew steadily. Lin May watched for a moment, then went back inside. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint. She drank it anyway, ate the jerky, tried to figure out what came next. North came in just as she finished. He was breathing hard, face flushed from exertion. "You know how to work?" he asked. Direct. No preamble. "Yes," she said. "What kind? Cooking, cleaning, books, numbers?" His eyebrows rose slightly at that last one. "Numbers?" "I kept accounts for Thomas." "Before." North considered this, nodded. "All right, you'll earn your keep." "What do you need?" He gestured around the cabin. "Place needs organizing, mending. I'm not much for domestic work. You do that, keep the fire going, cook when there's something to cook. I'll handle everything else." "Everything else?" "Hunting, trapping, wood, water, building. Fighting off anything that needs fighting off." The way he said it, flat, matter-of-fact, made it clear he wasn't exaggerating. "Understood," Lin May said. "Good." He pulled his shirt back on. "I'll be gone most days, sometimes overnight. You stay here. Don't wander. These mountains will kill you if you don't know them." "I won't wander." "Food's in the cache outside, buried, keeps the bears out. You need something, help yourself. Just keep track." "I'll want an accounting." She almost smiled at that. Almost. "There's a rifle over the door," North continued. "You know how to shoot?" "No." "I'll teach you, not today, but soon. Out here you need to know." Lin May nodded. He studied her for a long moment, like he was trying to figure out if she'd break, if she'd run, if she'd be trouble. Whatever he saw, it must have satisfied him. "All right then," he said. "Get to it." Then he walked out. Just like that. No explanation of what it was, no list of tasks, just expectation. Lin May looked around the cabin. Fine. She started with the shelves. Everything was there, food, tools, supplies, but it was organized by someone who didn't care about organization, just access. She could work with that. By midday, the cabin looked different. Supplies grouped by type. Clothes, what few there were, folded and stacked. The floor swept. The bedding aired out. She found a needle and thread, started mending a coat with a torn seam. North came back at sunset carrying 2 rabbits. He stopped in the doorway, looked around. "You did all this?" "Yes," he grunted. Might have been approval, hard to tell. He dressed the rabbits outside. She heard the knife working, then brought them in and started a stew. They ate together. Same silence as before, but maybe slightly less empty. Afterward, North pulled out a piece of wood and a knife and started carving. Just sat there, shaving off curls of wood, not aiming for anything in particular. Just doing. Lin May watched the fire, thought about the courthouse, about Thomas, about how her life had become this strange, quiet thing she didn't understand. "Why did you do it?" she asked. North's knife paused. "Do what?" "Pay for me. You don't know me. Don't owe me anything." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Saw you standing there. Saw how they looked at you. Like you were nothing." "I am nothing. To them." "Maybe." He went back to carving. "But I know what that feels like, being nothing, having nobody." She watched his hands work the wood. Steady, patient. "So you bought yourself some company?" The words came out harder than she meant. North shook his head. "Bought you a chance. What you do with it is your business." "A chance at what?" He looked at her then, really looked. "At not being alone when you die." The honesty of it hit her like a fist. She had no response to that. Neither of them spoke again that night. Days became weeks. Lin May learned the rhythm of mountain life. The early mornings, the constant work, the silence that wasn't really silence at all but filled with wind and bird calls and the creek running. North taught her to shoot, set up targets, showed her how to hold the rifle, how to breathe, how to squeeze instead of pull. She was terrible at first, missed everything. The kick bruised her shoulder purple, but she kept trying. By the 3rd week, she could hit the target more often than not. "Good enough," North said, which was high praise coming from him. She learned to identify animal tracks in the mud, learned which plants were safe to eat and which would kill you, learned how to bank a fire so it lasted through the night. North was a patient teacher when he bothered to teach at all. Mostly he just expected her to watch and figure it out. She did. They didn't talk much. North wasn't built for conversation, but they developed a kind of communication anyway. Small gestures, shared glances, an understanding that grew in the spaces between words. Lin May found herself not happy, exactly, but less hollow than before. There was something about the simplicity of mountain life. Work until you're tired, eat until you're full, sleep until you wake. That quieted the noise in her head. She still thought about the courthouse sometimes, about the laughter, about how small she'd felt. But up here, size didn't matter. Strength did. Will did. And she had more of both than she'd realized. One evening, about a month in, North came back early from checking traps. His face was tight. Wrong. "What is it?" Lin May asked. "Storm coming? Big one." She looked out the window. The sky was still clear. "How do you know?" "I know." He started moving around the cabin, checking supplies. "We need to prepare. Tonight." They worked until well past dark. Brought in extra firewood, stacked it high, secured the shutters, checked the roof, filled every container with water. North pulled down dried meat from the rafters, checked his count. "Should be enough, if we're careful." "How long will it last?" 3 days, maybe 4. That's a long storm. He looked at her. "It's not just a storm. It's winter saying hello. After this, snow will stick. We'll be locked in until spring." Something cold settled in Lin May's chest. "Locked in? Can't get to town. Can't get out. Just us and what we have." He paused. "You understand what that means?" She understood. 6 months, maybe more. Just the 2 of them in this tiny cabin with nowhere to go and no one to see. "I understand," she said. North nodded. "Then let's finish this." The storm hit just before dawn. Lin May woke to the sound of wind screaming through the trees, a sound like nothing she'd ever heard before. It rattled the shutters, found every crack in the walls, turned the cabin into a drum. North was already up, feeding the fire. "Stay inside," he said, "no matter what." "Where are you going?" "Check the animals. Make sure the cache is secure." "And this?" He pulled on his heavy coat, his hat. "Won't take long." He was gone before she could argue. Lin May went to the window, peered through a gap in the shutters. Couldn't see anything, just white. The world had disappeared behind a wall of snow. She waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. The fire crackled, the wind howled. 20 minutes. Her stomach started to knot. 30. She was reaching for her coat when the door burst open. North stumbled in, covered in snow, breathing hard. "It's worse than I thought," he said, brushing ice from his beard. "How bad?" "Bad enough." He stripped off his wet coat, hung it by the fire. "We're not going anywhere for a while." And they didn't. The storm raged for 3 days straight. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only the cabin, the fire, the two of them moving around each other in careful orbits. They talked more during those 3 days than they had in all the weeks before. Small talk, mostly. Trading stories. North told her about growing up in Kentucky, about losing his family to fever, about coming west to forget. Lin May told him about San Francisco, about her parents' restaurant, about the fire that took everything. Neither of them talked about the courthouse. On the 4th day, the storm broke. North went out first, post-holing through waist-deep snow to check the damage. Lin May waited by the window, watching his dark shape move through the white. He came back an hour later, face grim. "Lost the lean-to," he said. "Roof collapsed. Horse is fine. I got him into the shed, but we're going to need to rebuild." "Can we?" "Have to. Spring's a long way off." They spent the next week digging out, salvaging what they could, making repairs. It was hard work, brutal work. Lin May's hands cracked and bled from the cold. Her muscles screamed, but she didn't quit. North noticed. Didn't say anything, but she saw the way he looked at her sometimes, like he was reassessing, like she'd surprised him. Good, she'd surprised herself too. Winter deepened. Snow piled higher. The temperature dropped until breathing hurt. The world shrunk to the cabin and the immediate area they could keep clear. They fell into new routines. North hunted when the weather allowed, checking traps, bringing back what he could. Lin May managed the cabin, rationed the food, kept them alive in the small ways that mattered. Some days were easier than others. Some days the cold was so vicious they stayed inside, huddled by the fire, counting supplies and trying not to think about how much longer until spring. Lin May learned that North was more complicated than he seemed. He carved beautiful things when he had time, animals, flowers, shapes that meant something to him, but nothing he explained. He hummed sometimes while he worked, tuneless but oddly comforting. He had nightmares that made him wake gasping, but he never talked about them. She learned to read his moods, when to talk and when to stay quiet, when to push and when to let things lie. He learned her too, figured out she was stubborn in ways that didn't show on the surface, that she had her own nightmares, that she hated being useless more than she hated being cold. They weren't friends exactly, but they were becoming something, partners maybe. Two people keeping each other alive because the alternative was dying alone. It was enough. Until it wasn't. The day it happened started ordinary enough. Clear sky. Bitter cold. North wanted to check the far trap line, the one that looped through the northern valley, 2 hours out. "I'll be back before dark," he said, loading his pack. "Be careful," Lin May said, like she always did. He nodded, like he always did, and left. She spent the day inside, mending clothes, checking their food stores, trying not to think about how low they were getting. Noon came and went. Afternoon stretched. The sun started its descent. Lin May began watching the tree line. Sunset painted the snow orange and pink. No north. Full dark fell. Still no north. Lin May added wood to the fire, told herself he was fine. He'd said it himself. Sometimes traps took longer than expected. Sometimes you had to track something. But he'd never stayed out this late before. Not in winter. Not without warning. She waited. Midnight came. The fire burned low. Lin May stood by the window staring into nothing and felt fear claw its way up her throat. Something was wrong. She knew it the way you know things in your bones, in the part of you that existed before words. Something was very, very wrong. And she was completely, utterly alone. Dawn came like a threat. Lin May hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. She'd spent the night feeding the fire, pacing the cabin's 12 feet, trying to convince herself that North was fine, that he'd found shelter, that he'd wait out the night and come back with the sun. But the sun was here now, cold and pale through the shutters, and the clearing was empty. She stood at the door, wrapped in North's spare coat because it was warmer than hers, and stared at the tree line. The snow was undisturbed. Perfect. Like the world had been scrubbed clean of everything that mattered. Her breath fogged in front of her face. The temperature had dropped overnight. She could feel it in the way the air bit at her cheeks, the way the moisture in her nose froze when she inhaled too deep. This was bad weather, the kind North had warned her about, the kind that killed people who made mistakes, and North didn't make mistakes, which meant something else had gone wrong. Lin May went back inside, forced herself to think. Panic was useless. Panic got you killed. North had gone to the northern trapline. 2 hours out, he'd said. If he'd gotten hurt, twisted an ankle, fallen, something, he could be anywhere along that route, or off it if he'd been tracking game. She tried to remember everything he'd taught her about the mountains, about survival, about what to do when things went sideways. Stay put, he'd said once. If you're lost, stay put. Don't wander. But he wasn't lost. He was hurt. Had to be. And staying put meant he'd freeze to death while she stayed warm by the fire. Lin May looked at the rifle over the door, at North's pack still hanging on its peg, at the supplies she'd organized so carefully weeks ago. She could wait, hope he came back on his own. Or she could go find him. The smart choice was obvious. She barely knew these mountains, had never been more than 100 yards from the cabin, didn't know the trapline route. Hell, she could barely shoot straight, let alone survive out there alone. Going after him was stupid, reckless, probably fatal. She started packing anyway. North's spare pack first. She stuffed it with everything she could think of. Matches in a waterproof tin, dried meat, the small hatchet, rope, his extra knife, the salve he used for frostbite, a blanket, the canteen, filled. The rifle came down from over the door. She checked it like he'd taught her, loaded, safety on, slung it over her shoulder. She looked ridiculous, she knew. Drowning in North's coat, the pack too big for her frame, the rifle almost as tall as she was. But looking ridiculous didn't matter when someone was dying. She stepped outside and nearly fell. The snow was deeper than it looked, up past her knees in places. Each step was a fight, lifting her leg high, plunging through the crust, finding purchase on the packed snow beneath. This was going to take forever. The mule. North kept a mule in the shed, old, stubborn, but sure-footed in snow. Lin May waded to the shed, muscles already burning. The mule looked at her with brown eyes that radiated judgment. "Don't start," she told it. She'd watched North prepare the mule before, but watching wasn't the same as doing. It took her 3 tries to get the pack saddle on right, and the mule tried to bite her twice. But eventually, she had it loaded, and she led the animal out into the clearing. North had mentioned the trapline ran north. Followed the ridge, he'd said, then dropped into the valley. Fine. North it was. Lin May started walking, pulling the mule behind her. The animal followed reluctantly, snorting its disapproval, but moving. The world was so quiet, it hurt. Just the crunch of snow under her feet, the mule's breathing, and the occasional crack of a tree branch breaking under ice weight somewhere in the distance. She tried to move the way North moved, scanning ahead, watching for landmarks, keeping the sun on her right so she didn't veer off course. But everything looked the same. Trees, snow, more trees, more snow. How did he navigate this? An hour in, her legs were screaming. The muscles in her thighs felt like they were tearing with each step. Sweat soaked her undershirt despite the cold, and her lungs burned from sucking frozen air. She stopped, leaned against a tree, tried to catch her breath. The mule stood there, looking at her like she was an idiot. "I know," Lin May said. She pushed off the tree and kept going. 2 hours. That's what North had said. 2 hours to the trapline. But that was North's time. North who'd been walking these mountains for years. North whose legs were twice as long as hers. For Lin May, 2 hours became 3. Then 4. The sun climbed higher, which should have been encouraging, but all it did was remind her how much daylight she was burning. If she didn't find him soon, she'd have to make the choice, keep searching in the dark or turn back. Neither option was good. She crested a ridge and stopped. Below her, the valley opened up, a white bowl surrounded by trees with a frozen creek cutting through the middle, beautiful in a hostile, indifferent way. And there, maybe half a mile down, something dark against the snow. Lin May's heart kicked. She half walked, half slid down the slope, the mule protesting behind her. Closer, closer. Not just something dark. Someone. North! Her voice came out hoarse, smaller than she wanted. No response. She pushed harder, falling twice, the rifle banging against her back. The mule dug in its heels at one point, and she nearly left it behind, but she forced herself to stop, to coax it forward. She'd need it. Would definitely need it. 50 yards. 25. 10. He was face down in the snow, one arm stretched out like he'd been trying to crawl. A massive tree branch, bigger around than Lin May's waist, lay across his legs. North! North! She dropped to her knees beside him, hands shaking as she brushed snow from his face. His skin was gray, lips blue, but when she pressed her fingers to his neck, she felt it, a pulse. Weak, too slow, but there. Oh, She caught herself. Okay, you're alive, stay alive. She moved down to the branch. It was huge. Had to weigh 200 pounds at least, probably more with the ice coating it. A widowmaker, North had called these. Dead branches that fell without warning, silent killers. This one had caught him across both legs, just above the knees. Lin May grabbed the branch and pulled. It didn't budge. She braced her feet, put her back into it, pulled until black spots danced in her vision. Nothing. Come on! Come on! She tried lifting instead of pulling, managed to raise it maybe an inch before her grip failed and it dropped back. North groaned, the first sound he'd made. I know, Lin May said. I know it hurts. I'm going to get you out. But how? She looked around wildly, like an answer might be written in the snow. The mule stood 20 feet away, useless. The trees swayed in a wind she could barely feel. Think. North had taught her to think. Leverage. She needed leverage. There. Another fallen branch, smaller, maybe 10 feet long and straight enough. She waded through the snow, grabbed it, dragged it back. She jammed one end under the big branch, as close to North's legs as she could get it. Then she found a rock half buried in snow, rolled it over, positioned it as a fulcrum. Basic physics. She'd read about this once, in one of Thomas's books. Archimedes and his lever. Give me a place to stand and I'll move the world. She didn't need to move the world, just this branch. Lin May put her weight on the lever. The big branch lifted, 1 inch, 2 inches, 3. Pull! She shouted at North, even though she knew he probably couldn't hear her. Pull yourself out! He didn't move. The lever was shaking in her hands. Her shoulders screamed. She couldn't hold it. She let go, and the branch dropped back. North made a sound, half groan, half gasp. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Lin May pressed her forehead against the lever, breathing hard. Her arms felt like jelly, but she couldn't stop. Stopping meant he died. She tried again, got the branch lifted. This time she wedged a smaller piece of wood under it, creating a temporary brace. It wouldn't hold long, but it bought her seconds. Lin May scrambled forward, grabbed North under the arms, and pulled. He moved maybe 6 inches before the brace gave way and the branch came down. But 6 inches was 6 inches. She set the lever again, lifted, braced, pulled. Another 6 inches, again. Her hands were raw inside her gloves. Her back felt like it might snap, but North was moving, inch by terrible inch, sliding through the snow. One more time. The branch lifted. She braced it with 2 pieces of wood this time, stacked. Ran around, grabbed North, pulled with everything she had. His legs came free. The brace collapsed and the branch slammed down, missing Lin May by inches. She fell backward, landing hard in the snow, chest heaving. For a long moment she just lay there, staring at the sky, unable to believe it had worked. Then North coughed, and she scrambled to her feet. He was conscious now, barely. His eyes were open, unfocused, and he was trying to say something. Don't talk, Lin May said. Save your strength. She needed to check his legs. The left one was bent wrong, definitely broken. The right one might be too, hard to tell with all the blood. Blood. There was so much blood. Lin May's stomach turned, but she forced it down. No time for weakness. She pulled off her gloves, worked with shaking fingers to cut away his trouser leg with his own knife. The break was bad. Bone visible through torn flesh, already turning dark. She'd seen injuries before. Her father had broken his arm once, and she'd watched the doctor set it. But this was different. This was worse. Still, The principle was the same. She had to stabilize it, stop the bleeding, get him warm. Lin May pulled the pack off the mule, dug through it, found the salve, the clean cloth she'd packed. Used snow to clean the wound as best she could. North screamed through gritted teeth, then packed it with salve and wrapped it tight. For the splint, she broke branches to size, laid them along either side of his leg, bound them with rope. It wasn't pretty, but it was solid. The right leg was swelling, but not broken, as far as she could tell. She wrapped it anyway. Then came the hard part. "I need to get you on the mule," she said. North's eyes focused on her for the first time. "Can't." "You can and you will. I didn't drag your heavy ass out from under that tree so you could die of exposure 20 feet away." His mouth twitched. Might have been the ghost of a smile. "Bossy. Desperate. There's a difference. Now help me or shut up." Getting him upright was a nightmare. He outweighed her by 80 pounds easy, and most of that was dead weight. But somehow, with her pulling and him pushing with his good leg, they got him sitting, then standing, using her shoulder and a tree trunk for support. The mule, saints bless its stubborn heart, stood still while Lin May maneuvered North against its side. "On 3, she said. 1, 2, 3. She lifted, North pushed, and momentum did the rest. He ended up draped over the mule's back like a sack of grain, but he was on. Lin May tied him in place with rope, wrapping it around his waist and under the mule's belly. Not comfortable, but he wouldn't fall off. "Still with me?" she asked. "Unfortunately," North muttered into the mule's neck. "Good. Stay that way." She grabbed the mule's lead and started the long walk back. The return trip was slower. The mule moved carefully with its burden, and Lin May had to stop every 20 minutes to check on North, make sure he was still breathing, still conscious. The sun reached its peak and started down again. Lin May's legs moved on autopilot. Left foot, right foot, pull the mule, check the sun, keep moving. Her mind drifted to strange places. She thought about San Francisco, about her mother's hands making dumplings, about Thomas teaching her cards, about the courthouse platform and the laughter, about how none of those people would believe she was doing this. She barely believed it herself. "Lynn," North's voice, weak. She stopped. "What?" "If I don't make it, you're making it. Listen, if I don't, cabin's yours. Papers are in the box under the floorboard. Everything's yours. I don't want your stuff. I want you to stop talking like you're dying. Being practical. Be practical later. Right now, be quiet and conserve energy." He went quiet. They kept moving. The sun touched the horizon when the cabin finally came into view. Lin May wanted to cry with relief, but there was no time. She led the mule right up to the door, tied it off, and went inside to prepare. Fire first. She built it up until it roared. Then she pulled the bedroll closer to the hearth, laid out the extra blankets. Getting North off the mule and inside took the last of her strength. They fell twice, ended up in a tangle of limbs and curses, but eventually she had him on the bedroll. His face was gray, his breathing shallow. The leg was swelling grotesquely, straining against the bandages. Lin May knew what came next. Had seen it done once, years ago, when a cook at the restaurant broke his leg. She had to set the bone properly, pull the leg straight, align everything, let it start healing right, and it was going to hurt like hell. She found North's whiskey, he kept a bottle for emergencies, and brought it over. "Drink," she said. He did, 3 long pulls that would have killed a smaller man. "I have to set your leg," Lin May said. "The real way. What I did out there was just to get you home." North nodded. His jaw was tight. "This is going to be bad." "I know. I mean really bad." "I know." He looked at her. "Do it fast." Lin May positioned herself at his feet, put one hand above the brake, one below, took a breath. "Ready?" "No." She pulled. North's scream could have shattered glass. His body went rigid, back arching off the bedroll. Lin May felt the bone pieces grinding against each other, felt them shift, start to align. She pulled harder, adjusting the angle, feeling for the moment when everything lined up right. There. She held it, shaking with effort, while she used her other hand to adjust the splint, tighten the bindings. North had passed out. Probably for the best. When she was done, Lin May sat back, hands trembling. The leg was as straight as she could get it, the splint secure. Either it would heal or it wouldn't. She covered him with every blanket they had, checked his pulse. Still there, still fighting, and then she just sat. The fire crackled. The wind moaned outside. Lin Mei pulled her knees to her chest and finally let herself shake. She'd done it. Against every odd, every rational thought, every limitation, she'd found him, freed him, brought him home. Now she just had to keep him alive. 3 days passed in a blur. North drifted in and out of consciousness, mostly out. When he was awake, he was delirious, talking to people who weren't there, fighting invisible enemies. Lin Mei held him down when he thrashed, forced water between his lips when he could swallow, changed his bandages and tried not to look too hard at the angry red spreading from the wound site. Infection. She'd known it was coming, couldn't stop it, not out here. All she could do was clean the wound obsessively, apply salve, and hope his body was strong enough to fight. On the 4th day, his fever broke. Lin Mei woke from a restless sleep. She'd been dozing in the chair, unable to lie down, needing to be ready, to find North's eyes open and clear. "You're awake," she said. Stupid thing to say, but her brain wasn't working right. "How long?" His voice was rough as gravel. 4 days, almost 5. He processed this. "We're at the cabin." "Yes." "You brought me back." "Yes." "How?" "Stubbornly." He almost laughed. It came out as a cough. "My leg?" "Broken. Set as best I could. Don't know if it'll heal right." North tried to sit up, made it about 3 inches before his face went white and he fell back. "Don't," Lin Mei said. "You lost a lot of blood. Infection's still fighting. You need to rest." "Can't rest. Too much to do." "The world will wait. Winter won't." He had a point. Their supplies were lower than they should be. The firewood needed replenishing. The traps needed checking. But none of that mattered if he died. "I'll handle it," Lin Mei said. North looked at her. Really looked. "You don't know how." "Then you'll teach me. From right there. In that bedroll. Without moving." "Lin, I found you in a blizzard. I lifted a tree branch that weighed twice what I do. I set your leg with my bare hands while you screamed. Don't tell me what I can't do." The silence stretched between them. Then North's mouth quirked. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now drink this." She held out water. He drank. And so began the strangest weeks of Lin Mei's life. North couldn't walk, could barely sit up without help. But he could talk, and he did, telling her everything he knew about surviving a mountain winter alone. How to check the trap line without getting lost. How to skin a rabbit with minimal waste. How to read the weather and the way the wind shifted. How to bank coals so the fire never truly died. Lin Mei listened, learned, made mistakes. The first time she checked the trap solo, she got turned around and nearly missed the cabin on the way back. Came stumbling out of the trees an hour past dark, half frozen and terrified, to find North sitting up by the window despite the pain, watching for her. He didn't lecture, just said, "You made it back. That's what matters." The second time was better. The third time, she caught 2 rabbits. She learned to move through the forest the way North did, quiet, aware, always tracking her position relative to landmarks. The big boulder, the lightning-split pine, the frozen creek bend. The mountains were still dangerous, still hostile, but they were becoming known. One night, maybe 3 weeks into North's recovery, Lin Mei was cleaning dishes when he spoke from the bedroll. "Why'd you come after me?" She didn't turn around. "You would have died." "That's not an answer." Lin Mei set down the bowl she was washing, looked at him. "You're the first person who ever saw me as something other than a problem to solve or a burden to carry. When you stepped up on that platform, you didn't save me because you pitied me. You did it because you understood what it felt like to be nothing. You were never nothing. I know that now." She went back to the dishes. "But I didn't then. You showed me. And I wasn't going to let you die alone in the snow after that." North was quiet for a long time. Then, "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You still might lose the leg." "Even if I do, thank you." Something shifted in the cabin that night. Some wall that had been there since the beginning finally came down. They talked more, shared more. The silence between them became comfortable instead of cautious. North told her about his scars, the one on his face from a knife fight in Kansas City, the crooked shoulder from a horse rolling on him, the the smaller marks from a life lived hard and violent. Lin Mei told him about the restaurant fire, about watching everything her parents built turn to ash, about Thomas finding her in the street afterward, taking her in, giving her work and safety until his luck ran out. You loved him? North asked. Like a brother. Maybe more, I don't know. He never asked for anything more, so I never thought about it that way. And now? Now he's gone, and I'm here. And that's just how things are. North nodded. Things end. People leave. Nothing you can do about it except keep moving. Is that what you do? Keep moving? Was. Before. Before what? He looked at her across the firelight. Before you? Lin Mei's breath caught. Before she could respond, North shifted, winced. Help me up. Need to see if I can put weight on it. The moment passed, but it left something behind. Something warm and uncertain and slightly terrifying. They worked on his leg together, first just flexing the knee, then bearing weight with Lin Mei's support. Then a few steps, teeth gritted, sweat beading his forehead. It hurt him. She could see it in every line of his face. But the bone had set. The infection had cleared. Barring complications, he'd walk again. Might limp. Might never be as strong as before. But he'd walk. That was enough. By the time the worst of winter set in, the cold so brutal it made the earlier storm look gentle, North was mobile. Not healed, not fully, but functional. They split the work. North handled what he could from the cabin. Lin Mei handled the rest. She became competent in ways that surprised her. Could track game through snow. Could shoot well enough to bring down a deer at 50 yards. Could navigate the trap line in her sleep. The mountains tested her daily, and daily she passed. One morning she woke to find North standing by the window, looking out at fresh snow. Storm coming, he said. How bad? Bad enough. We should prepare. They did. Together this time, working in tandem like they'd done it 100 times before. When the storm hit, they weathered it together. Sat by the fire, shared stories, played cards with a deck so worn the suits were barely visible. And when the storm passed, they dug out together. Winter lost its teeth slowly. The days grew incrementally longer. The cold remained vicious, but it became predictable, survivable. Lin Mei marked the passage of time by small victories. The day she brought down an elk. The day North walked without the cane. The day she realized she hadn't thought about the courthouse in weeks. The day she caught North watching her with something other than assessment in his eyes. Something that looked almost like longing. She didn't mention it. Neither did he. But it hung between them, this unspoken thing, growing larger as winter finally, grudgingly began to release its grip. One evening in late February, after a day of melt and refreeze that left everything coated in ice, they sat by the fire in comfortable silence. Spring's coming, North said. I know. We'll be able to get to town soon. Month, maybe 6 weeks. Lin Mei's stomach dropped. Oh. You'll want to go back. To civilization. Will I? North looked at her. Won't you? This isn't a life. Not really. It's just survival. What's the difference? One has a future. Options. This, he gestured around the cabin. This is just waiting to die somewhere different. Lin Mei stood, crossed to where he sat, and crouched down so they were eye level. You're wrong, she said. This is the first time I've felt alive since the fire. Maybe before the fire. Out here, what I do matters. Who I am matters. I'm not someone's burden or someone's property or someone's problem. I'm just me, and that's enough. Lin, I'm not leaving. The words hung in the air between them. North's hand came up, hesitated, then touched her cheek. His palm was rough, calloused, warm. You should, he said quietly. You deserve better than this. I deserve exactly this. And so do you. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was brief, uncertain. Neither of them knew quite what they were doing, but when she pulled back, North was smiling. Actually smiling. Something she'd seen maybe 3 times total. All right then, he said. All right? You want to stay, you stay. But come spring, we're going to that courthouse. Lin Mei frowned. Why? Because I want them to see you walk back in there with your head up. Want them to see what they missed, what they threw away. I don't need their validation. Maybe not, but I want you to have it anyway. She studied his face, this man who'd bought her for $47.30 and given her everything that mattered. Okay, she said. We'll go. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, the fire burned warm, and for the first time since she could remember, Lin Mei felt something like hope. Spring came the way it always did in the mountains, reluctantly, in fits and starts, like it couldn't quite commit to the idea. One day the snow would melt enough to expose patches of brown earth, and the next it would dump 6 inches of fresh powder. But gradually, inevitably, winter lost its grip. The creek thawed. Water rushed over stones that had been locked in ice for months. Birds returned, filling the silence with sound. The air lost its knife edge and became merely cold instead of lethal. North's leg had healed crooked. He walked with a limp now, favoring his right side, and Lin Mei knew it pained him more than he'd admit. Some mornings she'd catch him working the knee, face tight, trying to restore flexibility that was probably gone for good. You should rest it, she'd say. Resting won't fix it, he'd reply. Which was true enough. They'd settled into something that felt almost domestic. Lin Mei cooked, North hunted what he could. They worked the trap line together now, her eyes and his experience combining into something more effective than either alone. Evenings were spent by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in the same space. The kiss hadn't been repeated. Neither of them seemed to know what to do with it, so they just didn't. Let it sit there between them like a promise neither was quite ready to keep. But something had shifted. The way North looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the way Lin Mei found excuses to stand close to him, small touches that lingered a second too long. They were circling something, and both of them knew it. March gave way to April. The trails became passable. North started talking about the trip to town with increasing frequency. We should go soon, he said one morning, before the spring runoff makes the creek uncrossable. Lin Mei was mending his spare shirt, squinting in the weak sunlight coming through the window. Do we have to? You don't want to go? She set down the needle. I don't care about showing those people anything. They don't matter to me anymore. They matter to me, North said quietly. What they did to you matters to me. Lin Mei looked at him. Why? Because you deserve better. I have better, here, with you. North crossed to where she sat, lowered himself carefully into the chair beside her. His knee made a grinding sound that made them both wince. I need you to understand something, he said. What happened that day at the courthouse, what I did, it wasn't charity, wasn't pity. I know. Do you? He reached out, took her hand. His palm was warm, rough. I saw you standing there, and I saw myself. 10 years ago, when I had nothing and no one. When I'd convinced myself that was all I deserved. Lin Mei's throat tightened. I bought you because I couldn't save myself back then, North continued. Selfish, maybe, but true. And then you went and saved me anyway. Dragged my half-dead ass out of the snow. Became someone I didn't know I needed. Caleb, let me finish. He squeezed her hand. Going back to that town, showing them what you've become, it's not for them. It's for you, so you can close that door yourself. On your own terms. Not running away, but walking away. There's a difference. Lin Mei studied his face. The scars, the beard, the eyes that had seen too much but were trying, somehow, to see better. All right, she said, we'll go. Yeah? Yeah. She smiled slightly. But I'm not wearing a dress. North laughed. Actually laughed, loud and genuine. Wouldn't expect you to. They prepared over the next week. Lin Mei packed supplies while North checked the trails, marking the best route. The plan was simple. Ride to Sweetwater, conduct whatever business needed conducting, and ride back. 2 days down, 1 day in town, 2 days back. 5 days total. It felt like forever. The morning they left, Lin Mei stood in front of the cabin and felt something close to anxiety. She'd been gone from civilization for almost 8 months, had become someone different in that time. Harder, stronger, more herself than she'd ever been. What if the town stripped that away? What if walking back into that world meant becoming small again? You ready? North asked. He was already mounted, the roan gelding shifting beneath him. Lin Mei looked at this cabin, at the clearing she'd helped maintain, at the mountains rising behind it all, indifferent and eternal. Then she climbed onto the mule and nodded. Ready? They rode. The journey down was easier than Lin Mei expected. Spring had opened the high passes, and North knew routes she'd never have found on her own. They made good time, stopping only to water the animals and eat. North didn't talk much, but he was tense. Lin Mei could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his hand kept drifting to the rifle across his saddle. "You expecting trouble?" she asked as they descended into the valley. "Always expect trouble. Keeps you alive." "That's a miserable way to live." "Hasn't killed me yet." Lin Mei shook her head but didn't argue. She'd learned that about North. He was who he was, and trying to change that was like trying to reason with a rock slide. They camped that first night in a clearing, North knew, with a fire ring already in place from previous travelers. Lin Mei cooked salt pork and beans while North saw to the animals. After they ate, he pulled something from his saddlebag and handed it to her. A dress. Simple, dark blue, but clean and whole. Lin Mei stared at it. "I said I wasn't wearing a dress? I know what you said. But that town has rules, and one of them is women wear dresses. You want to walk in there with your head up? You do it in a way they can't dismiss." "I don't care what they think." "Yes, you do." North's voice was gentle. "You can lie to me, but don't lie to yourself. You want them to see you, really see you, and they won't if you give them an excuse to look away." Lin Mei wanted to argue, wanted to throw the dress in his face and tell him she'd wear what she damn well pleased. But he was right. She took the dress. "Where did you even get this, Jess?" she asked. "Had it made. Last time I was in town. Before winter." "Before—" She looked at him. "You planned this." "Hoped for it. There's a difference." Something warm unfurled in Lin Mei's chest. "Thank you." North nodded, looking uncomfortable with the gratitude. "Get some rest. Long day tomorrow." They reached Sweetwater late the following afternoon. The town looked exactly the same dusty streets, same weathered buildings, same people going about their same small lives. But Lin Mei felt different. Riding in on the mule, wearing North's spare coat because she'd refused to change until they were actually in town, she felt bigger, somehow. Like the mountains had given her weight the town couldn't diminish. People stared as they passed, whispered behind hands, a few pointed. North led them straight to the boarding house, the only one in town, run by a woman named Mrs. Crenshaw, who was famous for minding her own business. "2 rooms," North said at the desk. Mrs. Crenshaw looked at Lin Mei, then at North, then back to Lin Mei. Her face stayed carefully neutral. "That'll be $4, 2 per room per night." North paid without comment. "You need anything else?" Mrs. Crenshaw asked. "Bath water," Lin Mei said. "Hot, if you can manage it." "Can manage it." Mrs. Crenshaw handed over 2 keys. "Rooms are upstairs. Dinner's at 6 if you want it." They took their rooms side by side, Lin Mei noticed. North helped her carry her pack upstairs, then lingered in the doorway. "You all right?" he asked. "Fine." "You look ready to bolt." Lin Mei set her pack down, turned to face him. "I keep waiting to feel like I did before. Small, scared, but I don't." "Why would you?" "Because this place made me feel that way. I thought walking back in would bring it all back. And it hasn't." She smiled slightly. "They're just people. Small, scared people in a small, scared town." North smiled back. "There you go. I'm still wearing the dress, though." "Good. It'll look better than my coat." He left before she could throw something at him. The bath arrived 20 minutes later, 2 boys struggling under the weight of the tub, followed by Mrs. Crenshaw herself, with buckets of hot water. "Need help?" the older woman asked. "I can manage." "Suit yourself." Mrs. Crenshaw paused at the door. "You're that Chinese girl. From last fall." Lin Mei's back stiffened. "I am. Heard you went with Caleb North." "I did. Heard you were dead. People said winter would have killed you up there." "People were wrong." Mrs. Crenshaw studied her. "I can see that. You look different." "I am different." "Good." The woman's face softened slightly. "That business at the courthouse was shameful. I wanted you to know that. Not everyone agreed with it. But no one stopped it. No, no one stopped it. Mrs. Crenshaw sighed. We're not brave people here. Comfortable, maybe, but not brave. Anyway, you need anything? You let me know. She left before Lin Mei could respond. The bath was heaven. Lin Mei sank into the hot water and felt months of mountain living slide off her skin. She scrubbed until her skin was pink, washed her hair 3 times, and only got out when the water had gone lukewarm. The dress fit perfectly. North had guessed her size well. Lin Mei studied herself in the small mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Clean. Dressed like a proper lady, but with eyes that had seen things no proper lady should have to see. She liked this version of herself. Dinner was in the boarding house dining room. Lin Mei came down to find North already seated, wearing clothes she'd never seen before. A clean shirt, actual trousers instead of buckskin, his hair combed back and beard trimmed. He stood when he saw her, just stood there, staring. What? Lin Mei asked. Nothing. You clean up well. So do you. They sat. Mrs. Crenshaw brought stew and bread, coffee that was better than anything they'd had in months. Other boarders trickled in. An older couple who nodded politely but didn't speak. A traveling salesman who eyed Lin Mei with undisguised curiosity. A woman in widow's black who sat alone in the corner. Lin Mei ignored them all, focused on the food, the simple pleasure of eating something she hadn't cooked herself. Tomorrow, North said quietly. What do you want to do? What do you mean? The courthouse. You want to go there or somewhere else? Lin Mei considered. The courthouse. Like you said, close the door. North nodded. I'll be with you. I know. They finished eating in comfortable silence. Afterward, North walked her to her room. Get some rest, he said. You too. Your knee's bothering you. It's always bothering me. Then get off it, he smiled. Yes, ma'am. Lin Mei watched him disappear into his room, then went into hers. Lay down on a real bed with real sheets and stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easy. Too many memories crowding in, too many what-ifs. But eventually exhaustion won, and she drifted off. She dreamed of the platform, of the laughter. But in the dream, she was different, stronger. And when the crowd laughed, she laughed back. Morning came bright and clear. Lin Mei dressed carefully, braided her hair, and met North downstairs. Ready? He asked. Ready. The walk to the courthouse felt surreal. People stopped and stared. Some whispered. A few looked ashamed. Most just looked confused. The courthouse itself was exactly as Lin Mei remembered. A squat building with peeling paint and a platform out front where they still conducted public business. There was no crowd today. Just the building, empty and ordinary in the daylight. North and Lin Mei stood at the base of the platform. Lin Mei reached out, touched the wood. It felt different now, smaller. This is where it happened, she said quietly. I know. I was so scared, so certain I was going to die. But you didn't. No. Lin Mei turned to face him. I didn't, and I'm not scared anymore. What are you? She thought about it. Free. North smiled. Good. Mr. North? A voice from behind them. They turned. The woman in the blue dress from last fall stood there, the one who'd objected to the proceedings. She looked older than Lin Mei remembered, with worry lines deep around her eyes. Mrs. Hartwell, North acknowledged. And you must be... She looked at Lin Mei. I'm sorry. I never learned your name. Lin Mei. Lin Mei. Mrs. Hartwell repeated it carefully. I owe you an apology. What happened here was unconscionable. I tried to stop it, but I should have tried harder. You tried, Lin Mei said. That's more than most. It wasn't enough. Maybe not, but it was something. Mrs. Hartwell's eyes were wet. I'm glad you're all right. I worried. All winter I worried. I'm better than all right, Lin Mei said, and meant it. They talked for a few more minutes. Mrs. Hartwell explained she'd been working on changing the debt laws, preventing what happened to Lin Mei from happening again. It was slow work, but it was work. If you ever need anything, Mrs. Hartwell said, please come find me. I will, Lin Mei promised, knowing she probably wouldn't. They parted ways. North and Lin May stood alone on the courthouse steps. You get what you needed? North asked. Lin May looked around. At the town that had broken her. At the platform where she'd been sold. At the people going about their lives, already forgetting she existed. Yeah, she said. I did. Want to leave? Not yet. There's one more thing. She led him through town, past the general store and the saloon, to a small building with a hand-painted sign, County Clerk. Inside, a balding man looked up from his ledger. Help you? I need to file paperwork, Lin May said. What kind of paperwork? She looked at North, then back to the clerk. Marriage license. North's head whipped around. What? Lin May kept her eyes on the clerk. Is that possible, or do I need permissions or something? The clerk blinked. Well, you need two people of legal age who want to marry. You both legal age? I'm 23, Lin May said. I'm 34, North added, still staring at her. Then yes, it's possible. There's a 3-day waiting period, and you'll need— We can wait, Lin May interrupted. What do we need? The clerk pulled out forms, started explaining requirements. Lin May listened, nodded, asked clarifying questions. North stood beside her, silent, looking like he'd been hit in the head with a rock. When the clerk finished, Lin May signed where indicated, then looked at North. Well, she asked. You're serious. As Winter. You want to marry me. I want to build a life with you, legally. So if something happens to either of us, the other is protected. So no one can take what we've built. So when I go back to that mountain, I go back as someone who chose it, chose you. North's jaw worked. That's the most practical marriage proposal I've ever heard. You've heard others? No, but still. So is that a yes? He looked at her for a long moment. Then he took the pen from the clerk and signed his name. The clerk stamped the forms. Congratulations. Come back in 3 days and we'll make it official. You'll need a witness, though. We'll find one, Lin May said. They walked out into the sunshine. North hadn't said a word since signing. Finally, Lin May stopped walking. If you don't want to do this— North pulled her close and kissed her. Not gentle, not uncertain, just claiming. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. I want to do this. Just didn't expect it to happen in a clerk's office. How did you expect it to happen? Didn't. Figured you'd come to your senses and leave eventually. Lin May punched his arm. I did come to my senses. That's why I'm staying. He laughed. Fair enough. They spent the next 3 days in Sweetwater, and it was strange how ordinary it felt. Shopping for supplies, eating at the boarding house, walking through town like they belonged there. People still stared, but differently now. Not with contempt exactly. More like curiosity. Confusion. The Chinese woman who'd survived winter in the mountains. The recluse who'd come down from his cabin. They were a story people told. Lin May could live with that. On the 3rd day, they returned to the clerk's office. Mrs. Hartwell met them there. They'd asked her to witness, and she'd accepted with tears in her eyes. The ceremony was brief, perfunctory. The clerk read words from a book, Lin May and North repeated them, and then it was done. Congratulations, the clerk said, handing over a certificate. You're legally married. Lin May looked at the paper, at her name next to North's, at the official seal that made it real. Thank you, she said. Outside, Mrs. Hartwell hugged them both. I'm so happy for you. You'll come visit sometimes, won't you? Maybe, Lin May said. In the spring. Mrs. Hartwell accepted that. She was a smart woman. She understood what the mountains meant to them. They left Sweetwater the next morning, rode north with full packs and lighter hearts. The journey back felt different. Lin May wasn't running anymore, wasn't hiding. She was going home. When the cabin came into view 3 days later, she felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe, or just rightness. They unsaddled the animals, carried supplies inside. The cabin was exactly as they'd left it, cold, dusty, waiting. North started building a fire while Lin May unpacked. You regret it? He asked quietly. Now that we're back? Regret marrying you? Yeah. Lin May crossed to him, took his face in her hands. Listen to me. That courthouse platform was the worst day of my life. But it led me here. To this. To you. If I had to go through it again to end up here, I would. North's hands covered hers. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed her then, and this time it wasn't brief or uncertain. This time it was a promise kept. They made the cabin theirs that night, truly theirs. Not his space where she existed, but their space. Together. In the morning, Lin Mei woke to find North already up, standing at the window. What is it? She asked. Nothing, just watching the sunrise. She joined him. The eastern sky was painted pink and gold, light spilling over the mountains. It's beautiful, she said. Yeah. But North wasn't looking at the sunrise. He was looking at her. Lin Mei leaned against him, felt his arm come around her shoulders, and thought about how far she'd come. From the courthouse platform to here, from property to partner, from nothing to everything that mattered. The mountains rose around them, indifferent as always. But inside the cabin, warmth was spreading. Life was taking root. And Lin Mei, who'd been told she was worthless, disposable, less than human, stood in her own home with her chosen partner and felt something she'd never expected to feel again. Hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the quiet hope of building something, of mattering, of having a future that was hers to shape. Spring deepened around them. The snow retreated to the high peaks. Green pushed through the brown. Animals emerged from winter dens. The world was waking up, and so was Lin Mei. She'd been sleeping for so long, years maybe, going through motions, surviving without living. But now, with North's hand warm in hers and the mountain air filling her lungs, she was finally, fully awake. The woman who'd stood on that platform would barely recognize her. And that was exactly the point. She'd been broken down and rebuilt, tested and proven, cast aside and reclaimed. Now she was standing on her own ground, in her own life, making her own choices. And not one person in the world could take that away from her. Not anymore. Summer arrived like a gift Lin Mei hadn't known she was waiting for. The high country exploded with wildflowers, lupine and columbine and Indian paintbrush, turning the meadows into riots of purple and blue and red. The days stretched long and warm, the kind of warmth that sank into your bones and reminded you that winter wasn't forever, even when it felt that way. North's leg had healed as well as it was going to. He'd never moved the way he had before. The limp was permanent, and cold mornings made him grimace when he thought Lin Mei wasn't watching. But he was functional, strong, still capable of everything that mattered. They'd spent the week since returning from Sweetwater building, not just maintaining, but actually building. North taught Lin Mei carpentry basics, and together they'd constructed a proper lean-to for the animals, replaced rotting boards in the cabin walls, built a smokehouse for preserving meat. The work was hard. Lin Mei's hands developed new calluses on top of old ones. Her back ached constantly, but there was satisfaction in it. Looking at something that hadn't existed before and knowing she'd helped make it real. One evening in late June, they sat outside watching the sunset paint the peaks gold and orange. North was whittling, always whittling, and Lin Mei was mending a tear in his coat. We should expand the cabin, North said suddenly. Lin Mei looked up. Why? One room's not enough. Not long term. It's been fine so far. So far. He set down his knife, looked at her. But what about later? Later? North's face did something complicated. If we're staying, if this is permanent, we'll need more space. Lin Mei felt her heart kick. They'd been dancing around this conversation for weeks. The future. What it meant. What they were building beyond just survival. How much more space? She asked carefully. Another room, maybe 2. And we should reinforce the foundation. Current one won't last another 10 years. 10 years, Lin Mei repeated. You're thinking that far ahead? Aren't you? She set down the mending. I'm thinking as far as next winter, maybe the one after that. 10 years feels impossible. Why? Because nothing in my life has ever lasted that long. My parents' restaurant burned. Thomas died. Everything I've ever had has been temporary. North reached over, took her hand. I'm not temporary. You don't know that. Yes, I do. His grip tightened. I spent 10 years alone on this mountain before you showed up. 10 years convincing myself that was enough. That I didn't need anyone. And then you came along and proved me wrong. I'm not letting you go. Not in 10 years, not in 50. Lin Mei's throat went tight. 50 years. You really think... I think we're both too stubborn to die easy. So yeah, 50 years. Maybe more. She laughed despite herself. You're insane. Probably, but I'm right. Lin Mei looked at their joined hands, at the calluses they shared, the scars, the evidence of work and survival, and something more. All right, she said, let's build another room. They started the next week. North sketched plans in the dirt, an addition on the east side with space for a proper bed and storage. Maybe eventually a separate cooking area, though that was ambitious. The work was bigger than anything they'd attempted before. Required lumber they'd have to cut themselves, stones for a foundation, time and effort and muscle. But they had time and effort, and between the two of them, enough muscle to make it work. Lin Mei learned to fell trees properly, not just hack at them until they fell, learned to strip bark and square logs. Learned that construction was really just controlled stubbornness. Keep working until the thing looks like what you planned. They worked through July and into August. Some days it went well. Other days North's leg would give out, and he'd have to rest while Lin Mei worked alone. Some days they'd argue about the best way to do something, and waste an hour being mad at each other before admitting neither of them actually knew what they were doing. But slowly, the addition took shape. Walls rose. A roof went on. Windows got installed, real glass windows that North had purchased in Sweetwater and packed up the mountain wrapped in every piece of cloth they owned. By late August, it was done. Rough, but solid. Bigger than the original cabin, with space to breathe and move and exist as separate people when they needed to. They stood outside looking at it, both sweating despite the evening cool. We did that, Lin Mei said. We did. It's not falling down. Not yet, anyway. She elbowed him. It's good work. North smiled. Yeah, it is. That night they christened the new room, made it theirs in the most fundamental way possible. And afterward, lying in the darkness with North's breathing evening out beside her, Lin Mei let herself think the impossible thought. This could last. This could be forever. September brought the first hints of autumn. The aspens started turning gold. The air took on a crispness that warned of coming cold. Animals began preparing for winter, and North and Lin Mei did the same. They'd learned from the previous year, started stockpiling earlier, hunted harder, put up more preserved food, reinforced everything that might fail under snow weight. Lin Mei had become a crack shot. Could drop a deer at 100 yards now, field dress it, pack out the meat without North's help. She was proud of that. Proud of the way her body had changed, stronger, harder, capable of things she'd never imagined. One morning in late September, she woke feeling off, nauseated, dizzy when she stood up. You all right? North asked, looking up from the fire. Fine, just stood too fast. But the feeling persisted. Got worse over the next few days. She couldn't keep breakfast down. Certain smells, coffee, frying meat, made her stomach revolt. North watched her with increasing concern. You're sick. I'm fine. You threw up 3 times yesterday. Bad meat, probably. We ate the same meat. I'm fine. Lin Mei didn't have an answer for that. It was another week before the truth dawned on her. She was sitting outside feeling queasy again when the timing clicked into place. Her monthly bleeding. She hadn't had it since... when? Before Sweetwater? Had to be. Oh no. Lin Mei sat very still, mind racing. Tried to remember everything she knew about pregnancy, which wasn't much. Her mother had lost 2 babies between Lin Mei and the brother who died in infancy, had been sick for months with both. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not here, except it was happening. The signs were all there, obvious in retrospect. North found her 20 minutes later, still sitting in the same spot. What's wrong? He asked immediately. I need to tell you something. He lowered himself beside her, face concerned. All right? I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. North went very still. You're sure? He finally asked. No, but probably. The timing's right. And I've been sick every morning for 2 weeks. How far along? 2 months, maybe. Hard to say exactly. North was quiet for a long moment. His face was unreadable. Lin Mei's stomach knotted. Say something. I'm thinking. About what? About how we're going to do this. Up here, without a doctor, without help. You're not... Upset? He looked at her, surprised. Why would I be upset? Because it's dangerous, because we're not prepared, because North took her face in his hands. I'm not upset. I'm terrified. There's a difference. Lin May felt tears prick her eyes. I'm terrified too. Then we'll be terrified together. He pulled her close. We'll figure it out. Like we figure everything else out. What if something goes wrong? Then we deal with it. But we don't borrow trouble. Not yet. Lin May leaned into him, felt his heart beating steady against her ear. Okay? 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 They sat like that while the sun climbed higher and the aspen leaves whispered in the wind. The pregnancy changed everything and nothing. Lin May still worked, but North started hovering, wouldn't let her lift anything heavy, argued when she wanted to check the trap line alone. Generally acted like she'd become made of glass. I'm pregnant, not dying, she told him after he'd physically taken an axe out of her hands for the third time that week. I know that. Then stop treating me like I'm fragile. I'm not. You are. And it's driving me insane. I've been doing this work for almost a year. Being pregnant doesn't erase that. North's jaw worked. What if you fall? What if you hurt yourself? Then I hurt myself. Same as any other day. I'm not made of porcelain, Caleb. I know that. But I'm allowed to worry. Worry quieter then, and let me do my work. They compromised. Lin May kept doing most of her normal tasks, but agreed to avoid anything involving heights or heavy lifting. North learned to bite his tongue when she did things that made him nervous. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. As fall deepened, Lin May's body changed in ways that fascinated and terrified her. Her belly started to swell. Not much at first, just enough that her clothes didn't fit right. Then more obviously. By October, there was no hiding it. The baby moved. Little flutters at first, like fish swimming, then stronger. Actual kicks that North could feel when he put his hand on her stomach. That's a person, he said one night, face full of wonder. A whole person, in there. I know. Does it hurt? No. Feels weird, though, like something that shouldn't be happening but is. You scared? Constantly. Lin May covered his hand with hers. But also, not? I don't know how to explain it. Try. She thought about it. Every hard thing I've done, leaving San Francisco, surviving that first winter, going after you in the storm, I did them because I had no choice. This is the first hard thing I'm choosing. That makes it different somehow. North nodded slowly. You're going to be a good mother. How do you know? Because you're good at everything you decide to be good at. Stubborn that way. Lin May laughed. That's your evidence? Stubbornness? It's carried you this far. Fair point. Winter came again, and this time they were ready. The addition gave them more space to move, to store supplies, to exist without constantly being in each other's way. Lin May's pregnancy progressed. By December, she was large enough that moving was uncomfortable. Her back ached constantly, her feet swelled. Sleep became difficult. No position was comfortable for long. But she was healthy, the baby was active, and North had become absurdly protective, which was annoying but also kind of endearing. You need anything? He'd ask 17 times a day. I'm fine. You sure? Caleb, I swear to everything holy. If you ask me that one more time, all right. He'd hold up his hands. Just checking. January arrived with brutal cold. Lin May was huge now, moving slow, tired all the time. The baby seemed to have run out of room. Every movement was visible from the outside, rippling across her belly like waves. Soon, she told North one morning. Has to be soon. How do you know? I just know. Something's changing. North had been preparing for weeks. Had questioned every woman he'd ever known about childbirth, which wasn't many. Had read the single medical book they owned cover to cover. Had assembled supplies, clean cloth, hot water, sharp knife, thread for stitching if needed. They were as ready as they could be, which was to say, not ready at all. The contractions started on a Tuesday morning, or maybe Wednesday. Lin May had stopped tracking days carefully. They weren't bad at first, just a tightening sensation, uncomfortable but manageable. She went about her morning routine, banking the fire, starting coffee, checking their food stores. By noon, they were stronger, coming more regularly. That's it, North said. You're lying down. I'm fine. Lin May, please. The please got her. North never said please. She lay down on the bed they'd built in the new room, let North fuss over her with blankets and pillows. The contractions continued, got worse, started coming in waves that took her breath away. How long is this supposed to last? She gasped between waves. Book said it varies, could be hours, could be longer. Longer than hours? Some women labor for days. Days? Lin May stared at him. Are you serious? That's what the book said. Your book is fired. We're getting a new book. North smiled despite his obvious fear. Whatever you say. Hours passed. The contractions got worse. Lin May tried walking, tried lying down, tried every position she could think of. Nothing helped. North stayed beside her the entire time, brought water she couldn't drink, held her hand when she needed something to squeeze, talked to her about nothing, just filling the silence with his voice. Tell me about Kentucky, Lin May said during a break between contractions. You never talk about it. Not much to tell. Tell me anyway. Distract me. So he did. Told her about growing up in hill country, about his mother who'd sung while she worked, his father who'd been stern but fair, about the fever that took them both when North was 16, about the years after, drifting west, looking for something he couldn't name. Did you find it? Lin May asked. Find what? What you were looking for. North looked at her, really looked. Yeah, I found you. Another contraction hit before she could respond. This one was different, stronger, more urgent. Something's changing, she said. North checked. His face went pale. I can see the head. What do I do? Book said to push. When the contraction comes, push. That's it? Just push? That's what it said. Your book is terrible. I know. The next contraction came and Lin May pushed. Nothing happened except pain. Again, and again, and again. She lost track of time. There was only the pain, the pushing, North's voice telling her she was doing great. She was almost there, just a little more. And then, finally, impossibly, pressure, release, and a sound. Crying. A baby crying. Lin May fell back against the pillows, gasping. North was moving, doing something, and then he was placing a tiny, bloody, screaming thing on her chest. It's a girl, he said. His voice was shaking. You did it. She's here. Lin May looked down at the baby. So small, so impossibly small, and felt something crack open in her chest. Hi, she whispered. Hi, little one. The baby kept crying. Lin May didn't know what to do, so she just held her, felt the tiny heart beating against her own. North was cleaning things, tying off the cord, wrapping Lin May in clean blankets, moving with efficiency born of pure terror. Is she okay? Lin May asked. She's so small. Is that normal? I think so. Book said newborns are small. Your book better be right about this. It better be. The baby quieted eventually, worn out from crying. Lin May examined her carefully. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair. Perfect in the way newborns are perfect, all potential and promise. She needs a name, North said softly. Lin May hadn't thought about names, hadn't let herself think that far ahead, afraid of jinxing things. May, she said suddenly, for my mother, but also something else, something from here. Mountain names, North said. Sierra? Aspen? Aspen May. Lin May tested it. Aspen May North. The baby made a small sound, like she approved. Aspen it is, North said. He sat beside them on the bed, carefully, like he was afraid he might break something. Looked at his daughter with an expression Lin May had never seen before. Wonder. Pure, undiluted wonder. We made a person, he said. Apparently. She's so small. You said that already. It bears repeating. Lin May laughed, exhausted. I can't believe we did this. Up here, alone. You did this. I just watched and tried not to pass out. You didn't pass out, though. Came close. Aspen stirred, made a whimpering sound. Lin May shifted her, awkward with inexperience, and the baby latched onto her breast without prompting. "Oh," Lin Mei said, surprised. "I guess that's instinct?" "Book said it was." "Point to the book." They sat together as the sun set outside, the three of them in their mountain cabin, miles from anywhere, completely alone. But not lonely, never lonely again. The first weeks were brutal. Aspen cried constantly, it seemed, needed feeding every 2 hours, didn't sleep more than 30 minutes at a stretch. Lin Mei was exhausted beyond anything the mountains had thrown at her. Her body ached, her breasts hurt. She felt like she was drowning in demands she didn't know how to meet. North tried to help, but there was only so much he could do. He handled everything else, the fire, the food, the animals, while Lin Mei handled the baby. They became experts in efficiency, in taking turns sleeping, in communicating with gestures because they were too tired for words. But slowly, very slowly, it got easier. Aspen's crying became predictable. They learned her sounds, the hungry cry versus the tired cry versus the uncomfortable cry. Learned to anticipate her needs before she could voice them. By the time spring started hinting at arrival, they'd found their rhythm. Aspen was sleeping for longer stretches. Lin Mei was healing. The fog of exhaustion had lifted enough to see clearly again. One morning in early March, Lin Mei woke to find North already up, standing at the window with Aspen in his arms. "What are you doing?" she asked, showing her the sunrise. Lin Mei joined them. Aspen was awake, looking around with unfocused baby eyes. The sky outside was painted pink and gold. "She can't really see it yet," Lin Mei said. "I know, but she will eventually. Figured we'd start the tradition now." Lin Mei leaned against him, watched their daughter try to make sense of the world. "You're a good father." "Don't know about that." "I do." They stood together as the sun climbed higher. Aspen started to fuss, and Lin Mei took her to feed. North made breakfast. They ate together, passing Aspen back and forth, finding the small joys in ordinary moments. This was their life now. Not just surviving, but living, building something that would outlast them both. Later that day, North brought up Sweetwater again. "We should go. Get Aspen registered. Make sure she exists on paper." "In this weather?" "Weather's clearing. Another few weeks and the trails will be good." Lin Mei thought about it, about taking her daughter to the town that had tried to destroy her, about showing them what they'd missed, what they'd thrown away. "All right," she said, let's go." They prepared carefully, waited for a warm spell in April, packed everything they'd need for a baby on a 3-day journey. The trip down was surreal. Aspen in a sling against Lin Mei's chest, sleeping through most of it. North riding alongside, hyper-vigilant, ready for any threat. But nothing threatened them. The mountains let them pass. The weather held. They made it to Sweetwater without incident. The town reacted exactly as Lin Mei expected. Stares, whispers. The Chinese woman who shouldn't have survived back again, this time with a baby and a husband. They went straight to the courthouse, filed the birth certificate, made Aspen real in the eyes of the law. "Beautiful baby," the clerk said, and seemed to mean it. "Thank you," Lin Mei replied. Mrs. Hartwell found them afterward, cooed over Aspen, congratulated them both, invited them for dinner. They accepted. Sitting in Mrs. Hartwell's parlor that evening, Aspen sleeping peacefully in her arms, Lin Mei looked around at the civilized world and felt nothing. No longing, no envy, just mild interest. This wasn't her world anymore. Maybe it never had been. Her world was a cabin in the mountains, a man who'd seen her when no one else would, a daughter who'd never know what it felt like to be nothing. "You're happy," Mrs. Hartwell said, watching her. "I can see it." "I am," Lin Mei agreed. "I'm glad. You deserve it." "Everyone does. Not everyone gets it." "No," Mrs. Hartwell said quietly. "They don't." They left Sweetwater the next morning and didn't look back. The journey home felt right, like closing a circle. By the time the cabin came into view, Lin Mei felt complete in a way she'd never felt before. They had everything they needed, everything that mattered, the mountains, each other, a future they were building one day at a time, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Years passed the way they do in the mountains, slowly and all at once, marked not by calendars but by seasons, by the height of a child, by the depth of lines on weathered faces. Aspen grew. Learned to walk on ground that would have killed her mother once. Learned to track animals before she could write her name. By the time she was 5, she could identify every edible plant within a day's walk of the cabin and knew which clouds meant snow was coming. She was fearless in ways that terrified Lin May and made North laugh. Would climb trees that made her mother's heart stop. Would wade into the creek when it was running high, just to feel the current pull at her legs. Would follow bear tracks because she wanted to see where they led. "She's going to kill me with worry," Lin May said one evening, watching Aspen balance on a fallen log like it was the easiest thing in the world. "She's fine," North replied. "She's got your stubbornness and my mountain sense. Kid's unstoppable." "That's what worries me." But beneath the worry was pride. Aspen was everything the courthouse crowd had said Lin May couldn't be. Strong, valued, free. Every day her daughter existed was proof they'd been wrong. The cabin had grown again. Another addition when Aspen was 3, this one including a workspace where Lin May could dry herbs and store supplies. North had built Aspen her own small bed, carved with animals he'd spent an entire winter perfecting. They'd become a family. Not in the way Lin May had imagined families worked. There was nothing conventional about their life. But in the ways that mattered. In the 1,000 small choices they made every day to stay, to build, to keep going. North's leg had gotten worse over the years. The limp was pronounced now, and cold mornings made him grimace even when he tried to hide it. But he still worked, still hunted, still provided. Just adjusted his methods. Used snares more than tracking, stayed closer to home. "I'm getting old," he said one night, watching Lin May put Aspen to bed. "You're 39. Feel like 60. That's the mountains. They age everyone." "Not you. You look the same as the day I met you." Lin May laughed. "Liar. I've got gray hair. 2 strands. I counted." Flatterer. But she knew what he meant. The mountains had hardened her, yes, but they'd also preserved something. Purpose, maybe. Or just the absence of the grinding wear that came from trying to be something you weren't. Up here, she was exactly who she needed to be. Nothing more, nothing less. Aspen turned 6, then 7. Started asking questions about the world beyond the mountains. "Are there other people?" she asked one night. "Lots of them," Lin May said. "Why don't we see them?" "Because they live far away. In towns." "What's a town?" Lin May tried to explain. Buildings crowded together, streets, stores, people everywhere, always. Aspen's face scrunched up. "That sounds terrible." "It has its moments," North said diplomatically. "Can we go see?" Lin May and North exchanged glances. They'd avoided this conversation, but it had been coming. Aspen was curious. Smart. She deserved to understand the world she'd been born into, even the parts they'd chosen to leave behind. "Maybe," Lin May said, "when you're older." "How much older?" "We'll see." Aspen accepted this with the easy trust of children who'd never been lied to. "Okay, but I bet I like it here better." "You might," North said, "or you might not. That's why we'll let you see for yourself." That conversation stayed with Lin May, made her think about what they were giving Aspen versus what they were taking away. The safety and freedom of the mountains, yes, but also isolation, limited options, a narrow view of what life could be. Was that fair? Was it enough? She didn't have answers, just questions that gnawed at her during quiet moments. The next winter was brutal, worse than any they'd faced. The snow came early and stayed late, piling so high it buried the lower windows. The temperature dropped and stayed dropped for weeks. They were prepared. Had enough food, enough wood, enough of everything to survive. But it was hard, confining. Aspen grew restless, cooped up inside, and her restlessness made everyone tense. "I hate winter," she announced one particularly cold February morning. "We all hate winter," North said. "That's normal." "Then why do we stay here?" "Because we love everything else." "That's stupid." "Aspen," Lin May started. "It is stupid. Why can't we live somewhere warm, where it doesn't snow all the time?" "Because this is our home," North said quietly. "And home isn't always easy. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it tests you. But you don't leave just because it gets difficult." "Why not?" "Because the things worth having are worth fighting for. And this place, this life, it's worth fighting for." Aspen didn't look convinced, but she dropped it. Lin May understood her daughter's frustration, remembered being young and thinking the hard parts of life were unfair, unnecessary, not understanding yet that the hard parts were what made you strong. Spring came eventually, always did. The snow melted, the creek roared back to life, and Aspen burst out of the cabin like she'd been released from prison. Life resumed its rhythm. Work and rest, challenge and reward, the endless cycle of mountain existence. But something had shifted. Aspen was asking more questions now. About towns, about other people, about the world beyond what she could see from their clearing. "We should take her," North said one night after Aspen had gone to sleep. "To Sweetwater. Let her see it. She's only 8. Old enough to start understanding, and better she sees it with us, where we can explain things, then builds it up in her head into something it's not." Lin May knew he was right. When? This summer. We'll make it a trip. Show her the town, let her meet people, then bring her home. Let her decide for herself what she thinks. They went in July, when the weather was good and the trails were clear. Aspen was vibrating with excitement, asking 1,000 questions a minute. How many people live there? What do they do all day? Will they like me? Do they have kids? Can I play with them? "Slow down," Lin May laughed. "You'll see everything when we get there." Sweetwater had changed, grown. There were new buildings, new businesses, more people than Lin May remembered. Progress, North called it. Inevitability. They stayed at the boarding house again. Mrs. Crenshaw was still running it, older now, but sharp as ever. "Is this your daughter?" she asked, smiling at Aspen. "This is Aspen," Lin May confirmed. "Beautiful name for a beautiful girl. You staying long?" "Just a few days." "Well, welcome back." Aspen was overwhelmed. Lin May could see it in her wide eyes, the way she pressed close to North's leg. Too many people, too many sounds, too much everything. "It's all right," North murmured. "You're safe. Just take it slow." They showed Aspen the town over the next 2 days. The general store, where she marveled at shelves full of things she'd never seen. The church, where they didn't go in but Aspen stared at the steeple. The school, where children her age were playing in the yard. "They're so loud," Aspen whispered, watching them. "That's what happens when you put 20 kids together," Lin May said. "It looks fun, but also scary. Most things are both." They ran into Mrs. Hartwell on the second day. She was older too, moving slower, but her face lit up when she saw them. "Lin May! Caleb! And this must be Aspen!" She crouched down to eye level with the girl. "I've heard so much about you." "You have?" Aspen asked, suspicious. "I have. Your mother tells me stories every time she visits." "Mama comes here without me?" "Sometimes," Lin May admitted. "Not often, but sometimes." Mrs. Hartwell invited them for tea. They accepted and spent an afternoon in her parlor while Aspen examined everything with intense curiosity. "She's bright," Mrs. Hartwell said quietly while Aspen was distracted. "Have you thought about schooling?" "Up here, there's no school. I could teach her, if you brought her down for a few months each year, or I know families who'd host her." Lin May felt her stomach drop. "Take her away from us?" "Not permanently, just giving her options, skills she can't learn in the mountains." "She's learning plenty." "I don't doubt it, but reading, writing, arithmetic, these are tools she'll need, wherever she ends up." Lin May looked at Aspen, who was now intently studying a music box. "I'll think about it." They left Sweetwater the next day. Aspen was quiet on the ride back, processing everything she'd seen. "Did you like it?" North asked. "Some of it. The store was nice, and Mrs. Hartwell was nice. But it was so crowded and loud, and everybody stared at us." "They stare because you're different," Lin May said. "Because we're different." "I don't like being different." "Nobody does. But sometimes different is better." Aspen thought about this. "I like our home better." "Good," North said. "So do we." But the conversation with Mrs. Hartwell haunted Lin May. She'd learned to read from her father, basic arithmetic from running the restaurant. Thomas had taught her more. But she wasn't educated, not really, and neither was North. What could they teach Aspen beyond survival? Beyond the immediate skills of mountain life? Was that enough? The question followed her through the rest of summer and into fall. She tried teaching Aspen herself, using the few books they had, showing her numbers, explaining concepts as best she could. But it was limited. Lin May knew her own limitations. One night, after Aspen had gone to bed, she brought it up with North. I think we should send her to Mrs. Hartwell, just for a few months each year. North looked up from his whittling. You sure? No. But I think it's right. She deserves more than we can give her up here. She deserves a choice, North corrected, and she can't choose if she doesn't know what the options are. So we ask her? We ask her. They did the next morning, explained what Mrs. Hartwell had offered. A few months each winter in Sweetwater, learning reading and writing and history, coming home every spring. Aspen listened carefully. Would you come with me? We'd bring you down and pick you up, Lin May said. But we can't stay. We have the homestead to maintain. So I'd be alone? You'd be with Mrs. Hartwell. She's kind. She'd take good care of you. Aspen was quiet for a long time. Finally, can I think about it? Take all the time you need. She decided 2 weeks later. Yes, she'd try it. One winter, see how it went. Lin May's heart broke and swelled at the same time. Pride and loss tangled together until she couldn't tell them apart. They took Aspen down that November, left her with Mrs. Hartwell, who promised to write letters, to keep her safe, to send her home if she wanted. The ride back to the mountains was the longest of Lin May's life. The cabin felt empty without Aspen's chatter, her questions, her energy. We did the right thing, North said that first night. I know. So why does it feel terrible? Because it is terrible and right, both at the same time. They survived that winter through work and routine and the knowledge that spring would bring their daughter back. And it did. Aspen returned in April, taller, more confident, full of stories about books she'd read and things she'd learned. I can write my name, she told them proudly, showing them the letters she'd practiced. That's wonderful, Lin May said, fighting tears. And I learned about China, where you came from, Mama. Did you know the Great Wall is thousands of miles long? I didn't know that. Mrs. Hartwell showed me pictures. Can we go there someday? Maybe, Lin May said. Anything's possible. The pattern repeated over the next years. Aspen would go down for winter, come back for spring and summer and fall. Each time she returned, she was a little different, a little more educated, a little more worldly. But she always came back. Lin May had worried she'd lose her daughter to civilization, that Aspen would taste the easier life and decide the mountains weren't worth the hardship. But Aspen always chose to come home. Don't you want to stay? Lin May asked once when Aspen was 12. In town, where there are other kids and stores and so many things we don't have? Aspen looked at her like she was crazy. Why would I want to stay there? Because it's easier. So? Easy isn't better, you taught me that. Lin May felt something settle in her chest. I did, didn't I? Besides, Aspen continued, everything I care about is here. You and Papa and the mountains. Town is fine for winter, but this is home. The years continued their steady march. Aspen grew into a young woman, strong, capable, educated in ways her parents weren't, but grounded in ways they were. She could read Latin and track elk, could quote poetry and skin a deer, could discuss philosophy and survive a blizzard. She was the best of both worlds, everything they'd hoped to give her. North's health declined slowly. The leg that had never healed right began to fail more seriously. By the time he was 50, he couldn't hunt anymore, could barely walk some days. It frustrated him terribly. I'm useless, he said one morning, watching Lin May prepare to check the trapline alone. You're not useless, you're just limited. Same thing. It's not. Lin May crossed to him, took his face in her hands. You built this place, raised a daughter, taught me everything I needed to survive. That doesn't become worthless just because your body's wearing out. I can't provide anymore. You provide by being here, by being my partner, by loving me even when I'm difficult. You're always difficult. She smiled. Exactly. That's full-time work right there. He pulled her close. They stood like that for a long moment, two people who'd survived impossible things together and were still standing. I love you, North said quietly. Never said it enough. But I do. I know. I love you too. Aspen was 16 when North died. It happened quickly, a fever that came on sudden and wouldn't break. Lin May tried everything she knew, every remedy, every technique. But some things couldn't be fixed with stubbornness and mountain medicine. He went peacefully, at least. Lin May and Aspen beside him, holding his hands. His last words were to Lin May, "You were never nothing. Remember that." Then he was gone. The grief was bottomless. Lin May had known loss before, her parents, Thomas, the life she'd left behind. But this was different. North had been her partner for 17 years, had saved her, taught her, loved her, had made her believe she was worth saving. Without him, the cabin felt wrong, too quiet, too empty. "We should leave," Aspen said a week after the funeral. "Go to town, start over." "You want to leave?" Lin May asked. "I want you to be happy, and you can't be happy here without him." Lin May looked around the cabin, at the walls North had built, at the life they'd created together, at the evidence of 17 years of choosing each other every single day. "You're wrong," she said quietly. "I can't be happy anywhere else. This is where he is, where we were. This is home. But you're alone now." "I have you." "I won't always be here. Eventually I'll—" Aspen stopped. "You'll what? Leave? Get married? Build your own life?" Lin May smiled through tears. "I know. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what we raised you for. And when that time comes, I'll still be here, in this place, living the life we built." "Mama, I'm not being stubborn." "Well, I am. But it's the right kind of stubborn. Your father showed me I was strong enough to survive anything. I'm not going to prove him wrong now." Aspen hugged her tight. "Okay, then we stay." They did. Worked the land together, kept the homestead running, honored North's memory by living the way he'd taught them. Lin May aged. Her hair went gray, then white. Her hands developed arthritis. But she stayed strong, capable, unbroken. Aspen grew up fully. At 19, she met a young man in Sweetwater, a carpenter's apprentice with kind eyes and steady hands. They courted, fell in love, married. "You can bring him here," Lin May said. "There's room." "I know, but—" Aspen hesitated. "We want to build our own place. Nearby, but our own." "That's good. That's right." They built a cabin 2 miles down the valley. Close enough to visit, far enough to be independent. Started their own family. Lin May became a grandmother at 48, then again at 50, then again at 52. Her legacy multiplied. She was 63 when Aspen brought her grandchildren up to visit one summer afternoon. They ran wild through the clearing, playing the way Aspen had played, fearless and free. "You did good," Aspen said, watching them. "With me. With all of this. We did good, your father and I. I wish he could see this." "He can." Lin May gestured to the mountains, the forest, the sky. "He's in all of it. This was his place, his life. It still is." They sat in comfortable silence while the children played. Lin May thought about the courthouse platform, about standing there, humiliated and terrified, certain her life was over. She thought about North stepping forward, about the choice he'd made, about every choice after that, to survive, to build, to love, to keep going. None of it had been easy. None of it had been guaranteed. But all of it had been worth it. She'd come to these mountains with nothing. Less than nothing. She'd been property, disposable, worthless in the eyes of the world. Now she had everything. A daughter who was strong and educated and free. Grandchildren who would never know what it meant to be treated as less than human. A life she'd built with her own hands. A legacy that proved everyone wrong. "Mama?" Aspen asked. "What are you thinking about?" Lin May smiled. "Just that I won." "Won what?" "Everything that mattered." The sun was setting behind the peaks, painting everything gold and orange. The grandchildren were catching fireflies in the gathering dusk. The cabin stood solid behind them, evidence of all they'd survived and built. Lin May looked at it all, the life she'd created from nothing, the family she'd built, the home she'd made in the hardest place imaginable, and felt something she'd never felt standing on that courthouse platform. Peace. Not because everything had been easy, but because everything hard had made her strong. She'd been tested by mountains and men, by winter and grief and every cruelty the world could throw at her. And she'd survived it all. More than survived. She'd thrived. The woman who'd been sold for $47.30 had become priceless. And everybody who'd laughed, who'd sneered, who'd said she was nothing, they'd all been proven wrong, not by her dying like they expected, but by her living, fully, fiercely, on her own terms. That was the real victory. Not revenge, not proving anything to anyone, just living, just being, just taking up space in the world and refusing to apologize for it. Lin May had learned many lessons in her 63 years, had gathered wisdom the hard way through pain and loss and survival. But the most important lesson was this: you are who you choose to be, not who the world says you are. The world had said she was nothing. She'd chosen to be everything. And in the end, that choice made all the difference. As darkness fell and Aspen gathered the children to head home, Lin May stayed outside a moment longer, looked up at the stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky. "Thank you," she whispered to the mountains, to North, to whatever force had brought her here. "Thank you for the hard things, for the tests, for the chances to prove myself. Thank you for never making it easy. Because easy wouldn't have made me this." She went inside, added wood to the fire, settled into the chair North had built, in the cabin they'd expanded together, in the life they'd created from nothing. Tomorrow there would be work. There was always work. But tonight there was peace, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything she'd never known she needed. Lin May closed her eyes and smiled. She'd started as nothing, as less than nothing, but she'd ended as proof that nothing was impossible, that strength came from survival, that love was found in the unlikeliest places, that home was wherever you built it, and that a woman who refused to break could change everything. Her story didn't end in the mountains. It echoed down through generations, through Aspen and her children and their children after that. Every one of them carrying a piece of her strength, her refusal to be diminished, her proof that you could be thrown away and still build something beautiful. That was her legacy, not just survival, but transformation. From humiliation to honor, from nothing to everything. From the courthouse platform to a home in the mountains where her family would live for generations. She'd rewritten her story, and in doing so, she'd proven the only truth that mattered. You are never what others say you are. You are only what you choose to become. Lin May had chosen to become extraordinary, and she was.